in listen-only mode.
Good evening and welcome to the American Indian Graduate Center presenting how to get your best score on the GRE, LSAT, or GMAT. My name is Melvin Manette. I am Director for the graduate programs here at the American Indian Graduate Center, and I am here with my colleague,
Gabriel Bell, Coordinator for the American Indian Graduate Center Scholars EMS program here on board.
And our presenter, Jay Rosner, is with us in another location, and Jay is the Executive Director for the Princeton Review Foundation. Next slide, please. There we go. I'm not seeing the advance. Oh, there we go. So I am Melvin. Gabe is here. Jay is here. For information about AIGC, you can always visit aigcs.org, call our toll-free number, or email fellowship at aigcs.org. Next slide, please. So AIGC provides scholarships and fellowships to American Indian and Alaska Native graduate professional students and a limited number of undergraduate students. So we have the AIGC Fellowship. Everyone who applies to that is qualified for it. The AIGC Loan for Services are competitive $20,000 a year scholarship. Wells Fargo American Indian Scholarship is for business and banking-related industry students, and that is highly competitive. Choctaw Nation members can also apply for the Choctaw Scholarship Advisement Program Research Fellowship. We have a Accenture American Indian Scholarship for undergrad students that is very, very competitive. And AIGC is also the American Indian Administrative Partner for the Gates Millennium Scholars Program. Next slide. Real quickly, to qualify for the AIGC Fellowship, you do need to be an enrolled member of a federally recognized tribe. You need to be pursuing your degree as a full-time student. You also need to turn in 2 forms that are available on our website, the Financial Needs Form and the Tribal Eligibility Certificate. Each of the fellowships has additional criteria. I would encourage you to watch your email in the coming months as we will be doing webinars on how to complete the new online application that AIGC has employed. Next slide, please. And Jay, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Melvin. My name is Jay Rosner. I run the Princeton Review Foundation, as Melvin mentioned. It's a nonprofit. And I thought I would take one slide to just tell you a little bit about what I do. I have partnerships with lots of great organizations in Indian country. These are just a couple of them listed, folks with whom I run programs involving preparing Native American students for various tests. And here are the tests that I work with. We're going to be talking about the GRE, LSAT, and GMAT this evening, but I also do work with the MCAT, SAT, and ACT. I do admissions workshops around the tests, addressing the issue of the tests for the admission staffs of graduate schools, and I'm involved in advocacy on behalf of affirmative action, both the University of Michigan and Fisher cases. Fisher is a recent case. University of Michigan case was a while back. Important Supreme Court cases involving affirmative action. And I'm actually a critic of all of these tests. I think they're problematic in various ways. But most of my work is empowering students to get their best scores on these tests. And I get particular satisfaction out of helping Native American students get their very best scores on these tests. So that's what we'll be talking about. And I think I'll start with a little review of who takes what test. The GRE, and most of you know this, but some of the folks on this webinar might be a little unclear on a few of these points, so I'll just review it quickly. The GRE is a computer-based test. That's what CBT stands for, and I'll explain what that is in just a moment. It's required for almost all competitive master's degrees, lots of PhD programs, and many MBA programs. That's the Master of Business Administration. A lot of business schools are starting to accept the GRE. Now, I do note that the GRE last changed in August 2011. So if you're talking to someone who wants to tell you about the GRE that they took in 2009 or 2010, they took a test that was somewhat different. So be very careful. Also noteworthy, if you have any test preparation materials that are geared to the test before August 2011, they're not going to be helpful. Don't use them. Get current materials. The LSAT, the Law School Admissions Test, is the only test of these three that's still in the old pencil and paper format, the format that you remember when you took the ACT or SAT, where you darken in little bubbles with your number 2 pencil. The LSAT is still there and is required by all ABA-approved law schools. That's the American Bar Association. And for those of you who aren't aware of this, the importance of ABA approval is if you graduate from an American Bar Association approved law school, you can take a bar exam in any state in the country. There are other law schools that are not ABA approved where you can only take a bar exam in the state in which the law school is located. So it gives a student very desirable flexibility to attend an ABA approved law school. The GMAT is the third test we'll be talking about tonight. The GMAT is a CAT test, computer adaptive test. It's required by most MBA programs, and it changed a little bit in June of 2012, but the same cautionary instruction here is appropriate. If you have test preparation materials from prior to that date, you should get a new set of materials to reflect what's exactly on the current test. A computer adaptive test, let me just talk for a moment about the difference between computer-based test and a computer adaptive test. Computer-based test, which the GRE is, involves taking a pencil and paper test and just putting it up on computer, which means that you'll start a section with perhaps 20 questions, and you can move around the section, you can skip questions, you can come back to them. You handle the section just the way you would have handled a pencil and paper section on the SAT or ACT, which you probably remember taking. The GMAT is a computer adaptive test, and that's different. The computer adaptive test works like this. You get a question on the screen. Well, I'll take you through a typical section. The first question pops up on the screen in a particular section, and it's a level of a medium difficulty level question. If you get that question correct, the computer picks the next question for you that's slightly more difficult than that question. If you answer that question incorrectly, the computer picks the next question, which is slightly easier than that question. And the computer makes those kinds of jumps each time you answer a question correctly or incorrectly, which means that everyone takes a different version of the GMAT because the computer will end up giving you different questions. That's a computer adaptive test. So the three tests we're discussing work in 3 different formats. And I'll refer to these collectively as the grad tests. So when I'm talking about grad tests, it means something that applies to all 3. And a lot of what I'll be talking, in fact, most of what I'll be talking about in this webinar are concepts that actually apply to all 3 tests, because what I'll be talking about mainly is how to best prepare for these 3 tests. And there are lots and lots of similarities. So let me now leap right to the trenches of this situation and show you my favorite GRE test-taking technique. Now, this only applies to the GRE. It doesn't apply to the GMAT or the LSAT. I can't show you a really good technique that applies to all three, but I want to give you a taste of how powerful good test preparation techniques are. I believe this is one of the most powerful. It's one of the ones that I can show you very quickly, and I think it will give you a flavor of how important it is to learn good test-taking techniques. So I'm going to show you what would be a text completion question on the GRE. So here's the question, and brace yourself. It's going to be a very difficult question. Don't feel intimidated if you can't get the answer. Remember, it's a very difficult question. Here it is. Here's the question. That's a pretty hard one, isn't it? And I'll show you the answers. Oops, I have a little glitch in there. The answer choices should be A, B, C, D, or E. But you have the answers, and you're saying to yourself, what is he doing? And what I'm doing is I'm showing you the structure of the question. I've taken out all the words. I've substituted X for all the letters because I don't want you to read the words. I want you to focus on the structure. And if I put the words in, you'd be reading the words and trying to do the question. Now there's no, the X's represent words, but the challenge here is not to try to guess what words they represent, because you won't be able to do that. The challenge for you is just to absorb the structure here. So, and I have 24 words at the end of the text there. And the object here, you probably, if you took the SAT, you saw a question like this. It's called sentence completion questions on the SAT, and the objective is to find the word from the 5 answer choices that best fits into the blank. So here's how most students will do this question. Most students will read the sentence and substitute the first word, A, in. So they will have read 25 words. Then they'll read the question again, the sentence again, and substitute the second answer choice, so they'll be reading 50 words. Third answer choice, 75 words. Fourth answer choice, 100 words. Fifth answer choice. Most students are reading 125 words to answer this question, and then they'll pick from the one that sounds best, the answer choice that they think is correct. That's not the best way to do this question. And if you're a well-prepared GRE student, you will learn a technique that will make this a lot easier. Not reading 125 words, but reading 35 words. So you have a choice in a tightly timed test. Do you want to read 125 words, or would you prefer to read 35 words? I go for the 35 words. And here's how I do it. I want to fill in a word in the blank that I feel best completes the sentence. So I'm choosing my word. Now what I want to do is I want to fill in that word without being influenced by the answer choices. Because if I glanced out at the answer choices, I'll be thinking about them, and that will fog my focus on putting in the word that I think is best. I don't want to be influenced by the answer choices. So I say to myself, Jay, don't look at the answer choices. And what do I say more specifically? Eyes, don't look at the answer choices. And what do you think happens? You've probably guessed correctly. My eyes go right to the answer choices. So I need, if I'm going to not be influenced by the answer choices, I physically put my hand up on the computer screen, taking the GRE, because remember, this question is going to be on a computer screen, and I block the answer choices from my vision. I do that with my left hand because I'm righty, and with my right hand, I write down the word that I think best fits in that blank. So I'm reading 25, and I just explained that to you, but that happens in 2 seconds, right? I block the answer choices, not 2 seconds, maybe 5, 10 seconds. Block the answer choices, read the sentence, write down the word that I think best fits in the answer, in the blank. Then what I do is I compare my word individually to the 5 answer choices. So I'm reading 25 words. I compare my word to the first answer choice, that's 26, 27 words I'm reading, to the second answer choice, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. I'm reading 35 words. Much simpler, fewer words are clogging up my head. Much faster, much safer. I get correct answers more quickly at a higher percentage. That's the way you do this, reading 35 words rather than 125 words. Now, having said that, there's an issue. And the issue is you can't do this well automatically. You have to practice it. You have to get quick at putting your hand up and blocking the words, unless you can tell your eyes not to look at the words, and they won't. And you have to develop the ability to write in a really good word very quickly in that for that blank, and that takes time, and that takes practice. And you'll need to do 30 or 40 or 50 of these questions and look at how you're doing and see what you could do better before you get really good at it for the GRE. But it shows you the power of how you can take the format and use a technique which makes, where you're reading fewer words, it's much quicker, it's much safer, it's much better, and you have a high likelihood of getting the correct answer more quickly. So that's just one technique. Let's move on, because I just wanted to give you a taste of a technique, and we're going to talk about some really important stuff after this. Starting with, what do the grad tests measure? What do the LSAT GRE and GMAT measure? Here's my opinion of what these tests measure. They measure how intelligent you are. Yes, Melvin, do we have a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, we had a quick question on regards to the GRE. The question was asked, the questions as you proceed through the GRE process, each question is adjusted based on your prior answer in the GRE. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's the GMAT. That's the process for the GMAT. The GRE allows, like a pencil and paper test, the GRE will give you a number of questions in a section, for example, 20 questions, and you'll be able to do them in any order, move around, skip, come back, do whatever you like. The process that you just described is the computer adaptive test. That's the GMAT. Okay, any other questions?
Right now,
Okay.
that's it, Jay, and I just wanted to also remind all the attendees that this session is being recorded and it will be posted on our AIGC.org website. Thanks, Jay.
Okay, great. So my opinion of what the GRE, LSAT, and GMAT measures. Do these tests measure how intelligent you are? I say no. Do these tests measure how well you'll do in graduate or professional school? In my opinion, the answer is no. The tests do help a bit in predicting first-year grade point average in your graduate or professional program. That's not a lot. It's not trivial, but it's not a lot. So the tests perform that function of helping predict your first-year grade point average. Do the tests measure how good you are on the tests? And the answer is yes. That is what they measure. So if you happen to have a high score on the tests, it means only one thing. It means you're good at the test, in my opinion. If you don't have such a high score on these tests, it means only one thing, in my opinion. You're not so good at the tests, at least right now. But the point that I want to emphasize tonight is you can get better. All right, and that's the message that I just mentioned. I have teach in parentheses. Excuse me, I have teach in parentheses because if you have a high score and you're interested in becoming a GRE prep teacher or an LSAT prep teacher or a GMAT prep teacher, let me know. Get in touch with me. You can get in touch with me through the AIGC. Can you improve your score? Yes. That's one of the main points of this webinar, to give you methods, suggestions, and ideas of how to improve your score. So let's get into that. But we'll start with the number of graduate tests, that is the number of GREs, LSATs, or GMATs that you should plan to take. The number of, notice I have official in parentheses at the top of this. I'm going to be talking about official tests, which are the ones that count towards admissions. There are also practice tests, which you take on your own at your desk or at your computer. They don't count toward admissions. So I want to make that distinction of we're talking about how many official tests you should plan to take. So how many times should you plan to take an official GRE or LSAT or GMAT? Okay? If you were in an audience, I would ask you to hold up one hand and hold up the number of fingers that would correspond to the correct answer here. But since I can't see any of you, there's no sense in asking that. But you think of a number. What's your answer to this question? Because I'm going to show you the correct answer in a moment. How many times should you plan to take an official test? The answer is once. Prepare well, get it right the first time. You've probably heard that before in other contexts. There is a but here, but do have a fallback date planned, only if you need it or want to use it. So the goal here is to have a target test date. You're going to take the test on that date, you're going to get a great score and be done with it. But you have penciled in a fallback date, which typically would be 3, 4, 5 weeks later if it's the GRE or GMAT. LSAT is trickier in that regard because it's a pencil and paper test only offered 4 times a year. But you have a fallback date penciled in, and you don't have anything else scheduled that day. And if you need it or want it, it's available to you. Hopefully you won't need it because you'll do well the first time. Now, a lot of folks take these tests twice or even 3 times or more than that. Why do they do that? Well, do they want to pay double test fees? I don't know. Do they feel like doing less than their best the first time around? You know, there aren't actually good reasons. There are not, I'll repeat that, good reasons to plan to take this test more than once. There's no harm in taking the test twice. There's no sin in taking the test twice or even 3 times. Once is better. Once is cheaper. Once takes less time out of your life. Better to do it once if you can, but you'll have a fallback if you need it or want it. Now, fee waivers. The 3 tests have different fee waiver situations, so I don't want to get into specifics on fee waivers right here. Just go online and check out what the fee waiver situations are if you need help paying the fee for the test. But do check this out in advance. This is something to be done 2-3 months before the test so you can go through whatever procedures are appropriate to get your fee waiver. Let me pause here for just a moment and ask Gabe or Melvin if we have any other questions that I might respond to at this point.
At this point, there are not questions specific to what it is you're talking about. One person did ask why grad schools still use GRE. Some schools don't use it. Is it not actually just an extra time for me to take them?
You know, you cut out just a little bit, Melvin. I didn't hear the entire question. Was that something I should respond to?
If you can, why do some grad schools still use the GRE score? Isn't it really just a waste of time when not all grad schools use the GRE as an indicator?
Well, it's a grad school by grad school choice, and more specific than that, it's schools within a particular university. For example, Columbia University in New York City, most of the graduate departments require the GRE, but the very selective journalism school, last I checked, did not require the GRE. If you're asking me why, some schools think it's helpful, other schools don't, and it's a school-by-school thing. So anyone who's really interested in that question, should ask the admissions departments of the individual schools. What most schools that use the GRE will say is that it gives them more information to help make better selections and admissions. Okay, moving on. When to take these tests?
And Jay,
yes, go ahead.
I was also just going to share, if folks had any questions about fee waiver advice, you can also contact Melvin at melvin@aigcs.org. For GATE scholars, they can contact Gabriel about fee waivers at gabriel@aigcs.org. Thanks, Jay.
Excellent. Thank you. Ideally, when is the best time to take an official grad test? The answer is as a college junior, and the next best time is as soon as possible after you're well prepared. So you want to tell folks who follow you. Now, if there are seniors on college seniors or recent grads on this webinar, you're a little bit late. It's not tragic. It's not fatal. But for most students, it works a little bit better to take it as a college junior because, A, you're within the test-taking environment, and B, if you take the test as a college junior, typically second semester junior, you have then first semester senior year to get your graduate or professional applications together, and you're in good time to be eligible to continue graduate or professional school right after you graduate from college. Whereas if you postpone test taking till senior year or late in the senior year, you may have to skip a year before you can start graduate and professional school. Also, very important, scores are typically good for 5 years. So if you take a test as a college junior and then decide you want to take a year or two off or 3, get out into the work world before going to graduate or professional school, your score is good for 5 years. So it just sits there waiting for you, and it's very nice to have a good score in the bank, as I like to call it, so that you then have flexibility to do what you want to do. Scores are almost always good for 5 years. There are a few schools here and there that want to score within the last 3 years or something. You want to check on that. Don't just assume it's good for 5 years, but it usually is. I'm wondering if anyone was told this by a campus advisor, because as to take the course, take an official test as college junior, because unfortunately most college students don't find out about this and end up being seniors or recent grads and then realizing that they would have been a little bit better off taking the test when they were a junior. Now, in terms of which test date you should pick, you want to pick an official test date after deciding what a good time period would be for you to prepare for the test. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But thinking about, what test date works best for me is not the best way to pick the test date. The best way to pick the test date, the official test that you're going to take, is what's the best period of time for me to do some intensive preparation for the test, and I'll take the test after that period. And I'm going to detail for you what that period looks like. But first I'm going to back up a little bit and talk about what good preparing intensively looks like long term. And by long term I mean you're going to take an official test 6 months or more from now. So if you're a first semester junior and you're thinking of, you're considering taking a GRE, LSAT, or GMAT sometime in the spring of your junior year, like maybe March, April, maybe May, sometime in that time frame, or possibly if it's a GRE or GMAT in June or July next summer. This is, you can do some of these long-term preparation suggestions that I'm going to make. If you're a senior and you're looking to take the test a month from now, you're a little late for these suggestions. If you're a sophomore, you've got plenty of time for these suggestions. So more than 6 months to prep. One of the things you need to ask yourself is, are you weak in reading or math or maybe both? The GRE has both reading and math. The GMAT has both reading and math. The LSAT is almost entirely a reading test, so math is not relevant to the LSAT. So if you're taking the GRE or GMAT, if you feel that you're weak in reading, and by the way, one of the ways that you can figure out whether you're weak or reading or math, and I should want to emphasize this, is you take a practice test. One of the first things that you should do when you start your thought process of when should I take the GRE, when should I take the LSAT, when should I take the GMAT, I want to take the official test. The first thing you should do is sit down and take a practice test so you can figure out when your strengths and weaknesses, where your strengths and weaknesses are. And so this involves taking a practice test 6 months or more before you're planning to take the official test, so you can see whether there are long-term preparation kinds of things that you want to do. So let's say you take a practice GRE, LSAT, or GMAT, and you have some weakness on the reading side of those tests. One of the things that you can do is daily practice with reading that's at a difficulty level that's comparable to these tests. The New York Times editorials and op-eds are comparable to these tests. Newspapers of similar difficulty with similarly challenging vocabulary tend to be comparable to these tests. The New York Times is a good marker. If you want to up your challenging daily practice reading up a notch, the New York Times Sunday Book Review, which comes every Sunday, these are available in all libraries, is actually a notch more difficult than the GRE, LSAT, and GMAT because it's written for a high-level literary audience, and the level of vocabulary is a little more difficult. The ideas expressed are pretty complex. So if you want to kick up your daily practice a bit, that's a good thing to use, and there's fresh new material every Sunday that will keep you busy for a good chunk of the week. Vocabulary, if you find that you have a weakness in vocabulary, there are books like WordSmart, which is written by some of my Princeton Review friends, which is why I mention it, but go to a bookstore, pull WordSmart off the bookshelf, pull the vocabulary books around WordSmart off the bookshelf, take a look at them, pick one that you will use, whichever one you like, and use that again, working with that 6 months or more prior to the test, doing daily vocabulary practice, trying to learn 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 words a day if you can. That really mounts up over time. If your weakness is on math, and that's unfortunately very common for a lot of college juniors approaching the GRE or GMAT, because many of them haven't taken much math or took a little math freshman year and just are pretty rusty. You want to review math basics. Math Smart is a good book for that. And again, go to the bookstore, pull out Math Smart, a couple books around it, and pick out a basic math review book that will help you with things like fractions, decimals, percents, ratios. You need to be very sharp on those things to do well on the GRE or GMAT math sections. And again, this is stuff that you do 6 months or more before the GRE, GMAT, or GMAT or LSAT. These are done before short-term prep, and I'm next going to talk about what is preparing intensively short-term. For those of you on this webinar, this is the single most important slide I'm going to show you tonight. If you learn what's on this slide and nothing else that I've said, you will have spent your time tonight in a worthwhile manner. This stuff is critically important. So if you're taking notes, or if you're not taking notes, now's the time to jot a few notes on this particular slide. What is preparing intensively short term? The test prep minimum short term, and this is right before the official test, and this is whether you're taking a test prep course or doing self-study. In other words, no matter how you're preparing for the test, these are minimums. 2 hours per day of high quality practice, high quality being you're not texting, you don't have earphones on, you're not eating, you're in the zone, you're in a quiet place where you're totally 100% focused on doing questions, learning techniques to improve your performance on one of the grad tests. 2 hours per day of high quality practice, and with a couple of 3-hour days in the week or two before the official test, because these tests are typically 3.5 hours, the GRE, GMAT, and LSAT. So you want to build up your stamina a little bit in a week or two before the test. 5 to 6 days per week for 7 to 8 weeks, right up to the official test. So that is a good, solid test prep plan for one of these grad tests. So remember what I said before, you want to think about what's the best time period for you to do 7 to 8 weeks of preparation, and then you take the official test right at the end of that period. So when you're thinking of scheduling your official test, the question should be, what's the best 7 or 8 week time period for me to do intensive preparation? That's when I'll do the preparation, and I'll sign up for the test right after that 8-week period. Oh, and I left out one thing. You want to do 4 to 5 full practice tests spaced out properly over the 7 to 8 weeks, so approximately one test every 10 days to 2 weeks. You do those tests for a lot of reasons. You want to check your stamina. You want to see what you want to apply what you're learning in your test prep to a test-like situation. You want to take these practice tests, if you can, not in your bedroom or at the kitchen table, because that's not like what the official test site is. You want to take at least a couple of practice tests in, say, a corner of a library. A library is a good space to do a practice test because it's quiet, not silent, and it's a little bit strange for you. It's not as comfortable as sitting at your kitchen table or sitting at your desk or sitting in your bedroom. You want to put yourself in some other place that's a little bit less comfortable for you, because the official test site will be a little bit less comfortable than your kitchen table. So you want to approximate. So if you do, sometimes students say to me, Jay, I simply don't have the time to do that. I'm going to school, I'm working, family responsibilities, I can't put in that time. What do you say to that? And I say, if you do less than that, you're likely going to get lower than your best score. I mean, that's just the way it works out. Think about these test prep minimums, and these are minimums, as rehearsal. You have an important dance or vocal or a musical recital or performance. This is your rehearsal for that performance. If you said to me, you know, I don't have a whole lot of time to rehearse, my response is going to be, you run the risk of giving less than your best performance. That's the same logic that applies here. For you athletes, this is practice. This is practice, and the practice tests are scrimmages. So, you know, when you show up the first day of practice for your basketball season or whatever your sports season is, the coach doesn't say to you, our first game is in a month, just come back, no practice, just come back and show up for the first game. No coach has ever said that in the history of sports. You start practice intensively for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks before your first game, so that when you're at your official game, your performance is at its very best. Same thing going on here. Test preparation, this intensive short-term preparation, rehearsal, sports practice, however you want to think about it, it's the equivalent to those things. Now, I tell high school students, when I talk to high school students, that they should, for the SAT or ACT, that they should do something similar to this. It's a little bit less, an hour and a half a day, 5-6 days per week for 5 to 6 weeks, 3 to 4 practice tests. So the high school students are doing a little bit of less than I'm suggesting that you do for the grad tests. But when the high school students roll their eyes or groan at those suggestions, I tell them that what I'm suggesting to high school students is the approximate equivalent of half a season of a high school sport. 1/2 a season of a high school sport. So what I'm suggesting to you in preparing for these grad tests is to do spend a little bit more time than you would have spent, and most of you did spend, in half a season of a high school sport. It's not going to kill it. It's a significant commitment of time. It should be intense, done with real focus, but it's not going to kill anybody. And a lot of you have put in double this amount of time to be on a high school sports team, and this is way, way more important than, unless you're a recruited athlete in high school, way more important than with implications for your future far more significant than any high school sport. So while I say these are minimums, sometimes there are type A students out there who say, well, if those are minimums, I'm going to do double that or triple that. And some of you are smiling saying, no, I'll have enough just doing that. But for those of you who think that more is better, I have a little visual for you to show you that more is not always better. We hope that that animal got down pretty quickly from that position, but I hope that visual makes the point. Smarter is better, more is not always better. So the key is, if you're going to do much more than I said back here, then you want to be careful that you don't burn out. Okay? So let me do this one more slide, and then I'll pause for a few questions, and if I could fit in a couple of slides after that, I will. I think this is an important slide, not as important as the one I told you that was most important, but I think this can be quite helpful to you. It's the test prep goal, and I have an acronym that I use, and the acronym is PACES, because pacing is important on these tightly timed tests. So I borrowed a concept for my acronym. So your goal in test prep is to be able to honestly say, right before the official test, as you're walking into the official test, the P is for plan. The goal is to honestly say, I had a good preparation plan. The A is for acted. I carried out my plan. I prepared intensively and thoroughly. So it's very good to have a plan. It's not so good to not implement or act on your plan. So you want to have a good plan. You want to have acted on your plan. The C is actually for 2 words, confidence and calmness. You're primed for your best effort if you're both confident in a real way, not a false confidence, and if you're calm. How do you get confident? Well, you get confident by having a good plan and acting on your plan, carrying out your plan. How do you get calm? You get calm by having a good plan and implementing your plan. So these concepts kind of flow naturally from the first 2. The 4th concept, the E in PACES, is for energized. You want to be ready mentally, emotionally, and physically to do the 3.5 hours of optimal work. If you're mentally, emotionally, and physically able to do 2 hours of really good work and you fade in the last hour or hour and a half, you're not going to get your best score. So you need to be energized. For some of you, that will mean that you do a little exercise program. Now, you know, it doesn't have to be long, but you just get yourself in really good physical shape. It obviously means good sleeping and eating in the 2, 3, 4 days right before the test, so that you go in that morning with a maximum amount of energy. And the S is for secure, P-A-C-E-S. The S is for secure. You have a fallback. So you should feel pretty safe. Something happens that's weird, unusual, unpredictable, you have a fallback. So that you have like a security blanket. So if you can walk into the official test honestly saying all of these things, you're primed to get your best score. And that's what I'm interested in helping you get. So let me take a pause here just for a moment and see if my friends Gabriel or Melvin have a question or two that you've submitted that I might respond to here.
All right, Jay, we got a couple questions here. The first one is, I'm taking 17 credit hour load, campus-based leader, a research assistant, and very much involved in my family. Obviously, I don't have enough time to prep. When is a good time to prep, or how can I make time to prep?
Well, I don't have any gems for you here. All I can say is you might have to give up on something. Academics, if it's explained to them properly, can be very understanding about this. If you go to someone who's supervising your research, or if you go to your academic advisor and say, you know, I really need to carve out time to prepare for the GRE, and I need you to help me move some things around so I can free up 2 months to do this, or, you know, a month, although that's, you know, I'm suggesting more than that. You'll find academics to be relatively accommodating. I've had lots of students with whom I've worked be able to free up some time to do some good prep because the academic people that they're involved with understood what was going on and were willing to work things out to allow for some time. You know, as to getting some time from your family, you know, that's can be harder. So I would work the academic side of your life first to see what flexibility you can create. We have another question or two?
Yeah, we got one question here, and just for a quick time check, we got about 12 minutes left till 6 Pacific time. Second question is there a place or way to get free practice tests for the LSAT?
I haven't checked recently. I know that Lost Services, which is the company that runs the LSAT, sells practice tests. I think they're a couple of bucks a piece. They were last time I checked. You should be able to get practice LSATs from people on campus. I would try contacting your pre-law advisor to see if you can get free practice LSATs through your advisor. If they're not available to you for free, they should not be very expensive. Just look around, check things out. Do you have another question?
This is Melvin. I don't have a question, but a couple of comments. I'm going to put a plug in here for Graduate and College Horizons. Graduate Horizons attendees frequently receive test prep materials, so you'll want to look at collegehorizons.org and look at the Graduate Horizons program. The sessions will be at Cornell University this summer. So look at that. I don't know how many slots they have left, but please do look at that. Additionally, I know that Princeton Review has an online Facebook page. I think online and Facebook is redundant, but they have a Facebook page that they give a test question of the day and a test hint of the day. There may be something similar specifically for the LSAT. You might also check with the Indian Law Center And I can get you that information afterwards through the entire list of people who registered for this session. And if we have other folks who have other ideas, please email those to Melvin or Gabriel, and we'll make sure to include those in the email. I know we have someone from College Horizons on the webinar, but I don't think he can speak with us.
Thank you, Melvin. Yes, one of the things about getting test prep materials is that you want to look around. Test prep books are often in your library. They're not that expensive, $20, $25 in that range. But check your library for test prep books. Practice tests are a little harder to come by for the LSAT. For the GRE and GMAT, they're actually a little easier to come by because you can get practice tests from virtually all the major test prep companies have free practice tests online that you can access. Now, it might be only 1 or 2 per company, but you can access a free practice GRE or GMAT from Princeton Review. You can access one from Kaplan, etc. So the books, check out libraries if you can't afford to buy them. The practice tests, just be creative and look around. Again, pre-law advisors and graduate school advisors on your college campuses are good folks to ask for materials.
Oh, for this one.
Shall I proceed?
What do you suggest someone who's taking a second prep test or a second GRE test next Tuesday? I'm looking at the pages and saying do the C, E, and S.
Next Tuesday, do what you can. Don't make yourself crazy. You should. This is a good general rule, and I'm glad the question was asked for a more general purpose, and that is, how much should you study in any given day? Remember, I'm saying 2 hours. It's not a good idea. If some people think, oh, if he's suggesting 2, and I only have a week, maybe I'll do 10 hours a day every day for the next week. That's really not a good idea. The way to do more than 2 hours a day is do 2 hours in the morning, take a break, a little exercise, eat lunch, do something else, and then do 2 hours later in the afternoon. I don't really like to see students do much more than 4 hours a day in that context. So for the person taking the GRE next week, do 4 hours a day that way if you can. That's the best you can do. Obviously, you want to spread your prep out for 7 to 8 weeks if you can. Any other questions, or should I do another slide or two?
We got just one last question. Just came in. Do you recommend online test prep courses? Do you have any cautionary advice around this?
Oh, yes, thank you. Good question, and it leads me into a couple of topics. Online, most folks believe, and I've heard from most students who've tried both, that a classroom course tends to be better than an online course for obvious reasons. You have an expert teacher who can respond to your questions. Now, the downside is classroom courses tend to cost a whole lot more than online courses. So if you're financially strapped, an online course may be better for you. The rule of thumb here is be a good consumer. Check out what's available in your locality. If you're in New York City, it's a different, you have a far broader, wider, and deeper set of options than you do if you're in Omaha, Nebraska. So check out what's available in your locality in terms of classroom courses. Check out what's available online. Do the free sample classes or presentations, and be a good consumer. Make a good choice. Try to get value for your dollar. There's a related question to that, and that is, how much should you be doing on computer in general? And the answer is very different for the 2 tests, for the 3 tests. First of all, let me talk about LSAT. LSAT is a paper and pencil test. You should be doing as little as possible on computer. For a pencil and paper test, you should be prepping 80 to 90% of your prepping should be with pencil and paper. If you're taking the GRE or GMAT, those are tests you take on computer, 80 to 90% of your preparation should be on computer. So while you have a GRE or GMAT prep book, that's a good idea. You're going to be wanting to do a lot of practice questions and all your practice tests on computer. You want to do all of your LSAT practice tests in pencil and paper because it's a pencil and paper test. Okay?
Okay, Jay, for recording purposes, can we see your last 4 slides quickly? Looks like our recording will end in about 5 minutes.
Okay. I'll go through these quickly, and I don't have to finish because I've put the most important slides up front, and the slides get a little more specific as I go along, a little less important than the earlier ones. The spectrum of test preparation, lots of options. Be a good consumer. Check out what's available. Make a good choice for you, your schedule, and your budget. That'll differ for every person who's on this webinar who lives in a different place and has a different budget and has different logistical constraints. So be a good consumer. Check out the options. Make the best decision for you. I talked about quantity test prep, the 2 hours a day, etc. You know that. You have a good plan, 2 hours a day, 5 to 6 days per week, 7 to 8 weeks. Quality is also important, and I referred to that before. You want to be totally in the zone, in a quiet place, 100% focused on your preparation. Pick up a sense of humor if you don't have one. It's helpful in this domain. If you see a really stupid answer when you're doing your test prep, feel free to laugh out loud. That's a healthy response. You don't want to laugh out loud at the official test because you don't want the proctor coming over and checking you out. But humor is appropriate in this domain. You want to be skeptical of test companies' advice. And my suggestion is to try to take a course if at all possible. Some offices on some undergraduate campuses will provide funding for courses. Not a lot, but do some research and investigation. See if you can find funding. Here's, for those of you doing your test prep or taking a prep course, unlike some college courses, and I don't know if you were guilty of this, but I was guilty of it every once in a while, where you wait to the back end of the course to really kick it in and do your work. Doesn't work with test prep. You have to prep hard from day one. It's 7 to 8 weeks of cramming. You can't cram a cram course. So the 2 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week for 7 to 8 weeks is the right way to do it. If you mess with that, you're just going to make it a little less effective. And everything you do in test prep should make sense. So if you have a question and you're not sure why you're doing something in test prep, ask a test prep instructor or get my email from AIGC and email me. I'll be happy to answer your question. And if you hear stuff that might be weird about test prep, maybe it is weird, again, ask a test prep instructor or ask me. I think I'll end on this slide. We only have a couple minutes left. I'll do this slide in a minute, and then we can slip in maybe a last-minute question. But underrepresented minority test takers have a couple of things they need to be particularly careful of. One is avoidance. Everyone procrastinates. But having dealt with Native American test takers for 10 years now, I've seen sufficient procrastination that I needed a stronger word to address it. So I've used the word avoidance. If you're the kind of person who says, well, I'll take the official test in 3 months, and then 3 months come by, no, I'll take the official test 3 months from now, and that time goes by, you're in an avoidance pattern. And by labeling it, hopefully you can say to yourself, I'm in an avoidance pattern, I can't do this anymore, I got to do some prep, I've got to take the official test. test. You want a test are skewed against you for various ways, which I won't get into, but you want to accept the challenge and you want to prep harder than other folks. As I said before, be wary of the test company's advice. Try to take an intensive course if possible. If you can't, you know what you need to do. You need to do the 2 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week for 7 to 8 weeks. I want to see you work hard and beat the averages. And my fantasy is that you all get great scores and then you become critics of the test, like I am, because your criticism will have more weight the better your score is. So Melvin, why don't I stop it there? I think we have another minute. Do we have any last minute questions or comments? Melvin, are you there? Gabe, are you there?
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry. I was on mute and gave a wonderful speech. You should have heard it. There are no additional questions, and at this time, I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to sit through the session. Know that this webinar will be on our website, aigcs.org, and if you have any other questions or any other comments regarding this website or advice, please email it to melvin@aigcs.org or gabriel@aigcs.org. Thank you so much, Jay, for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.